Hello, everyone. How you doing? It's ETHDenver. It's awesome. I'm here, I think, for a very interesting conversation to be had in the next 20 minutes, which is to provide you all with a bit of a foundation to create a framework for a DevRel playbook in the Web3 context. Before we get going, my name is Ben. I'm the head of DevRel at a place called Fuel. I'm also a longtime Rubyist, maybe like Ruby, blockchain on Rails one day, not really sure. And I do happen to love a lot of dad jokes, so if I do throw one in there, please forgive me in advance if you don't find it too funny. You can find me on all social at Hummus on Rails, the Rails part because of Ruby, and the hummus part because, who doesn't like a good hummus for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, let's be honest. So let's get going. The first thing that we need to understand is it seems like more and more, increasingly every single day, if you are building a developer-facing company, if you are a large company, a small company, a brand new startup, there'll be some investor in the room. Some VC, somebody's gonna say to you, what about DevRel? Your deck looks great, your product market fit is really awesome, but there's this thing called DevRel, and you should have it. Everyone wants DevRel. It's like the thing everyone thinks they need to have in a developer-facing context, but not everyone actually knows. I would say very few people have a good articulation of the understanding of what the discipline of developer relations is in an organization, which leads to a lot of frustration. Frustration on behalf of the practitioners working in those DevRel contexts, and frustration from the business side, trying to understand what exactly do these people do that are working in this company that I have. And that kind of frustration can really lead to some churn and unpleasant outcomes for everyone. So in our time, for the sake of this conversation, we're going to propose a three-pronged definition of what the purpose of DevRel is. This is not an all-encompassing definition. It is not meant to provide you with the one and only answer for all of developer relations, but for our conversation today, it will ground the next few minutes we have together. So a clear definition of DevRel may be something along the lines of enhancing product quality, nurturing authentic community, and driving developer adoption. Those three things, those three prongs together work in tandem. So when DevRel is centered on product, DevRel can exist in many different functions in an organization. It can be in engineering, can be in product, can be in marketing. But when DevRel is centered on product, it is in its root, at its core at that point, is building authentic community developers who are trying to enhance that product, whether it's SDKs, tooling, blockchain, it doesn't matter what it is. They're trying to enhance the product quality in the open source community. And as a result of that, it is, by nature of doing those activities, driving exponentially, hopefully, developer adoption of those tools. So that sounds like a lot. That's a lot of activity to do. Enhance product quality, drive adoption, build genuine community. That's a lot for a team of 30. It's definitely a lot if you're a solo DevRel member in your organization. How do you even begin to approach that problem? So in our time together, we're going to talk about four different frameworks, four different aspects of our framework that may be helpful for you as you are building out your DevRel strategy. First, we're going to talk about the importance of an origin story. Then measurements that are impactful. What is the Web3 difference in this whole conversation? And lastly, we're going to look at what is called in the business world and can be adopted here, a BHAG. Who's heard of BHAG before? Anyone? Amazing. There's something you're going to learn from this talk. At least one thing you're going to get. And you'll be like, Ben, what's a BHAG? You're going to find out in about 10 to 12 minutes. Okay, ready? Let's dive in. So first of all, your origin story is absolutely integral. Why is it absolutely integral? Because you are a team that crosses so many different functions in any organization. You are developers who are friendly, sometimes. You are developers who like to talk to people, sometimes. You're developers that can write not only code, but maybe English as well. You're developers that can work with grantees. So who wants to work with you? BD, marketing, product, engineering. Everyone wants to touch upon you and be involved in your work, which means you need to show value across the entire organization, not only because it's beneficial, but if you want your DevRel organization in the company to have long-term viability. And long-term viability is a politically correct term for what? To not be let go of. You need to be able to show value across and up. How do you show that value? You show that value the same way that Spider-Man shows that value. Spider-Man knows exactly where he came from. He knows his origin story. His origin story helps direct what he gets involved in and what he doesn't get involved in. It helps drive who he is every single day. And the same is true with every single superhero, whether it's Marvel or DC or any new one, it doesn't really matter. They all have an origin story. And that becomes the grounding by which they can build and move forward from there. Your team also needs an origin story. So let's dive into what an origin story may be for your DevRel team, whether you are the only DevRel person or you're a team of 10 or a team of 30, it doesn't matter. What is your origin story? It sometimes goes along something like this. DevRel started here because ellipses. Well, what is the ellipses? DevRel started here because developers didn't know we existed. We had built this great thing and no one's using it. And no one's involved. DevRel's here because our tooling is super, super complicated. That never happens in blockchain, right? Tooling is never complicated at all. Totally intuitive, totally easy. But it's really complicated. And we got no dev tooling. We're an anti-dev tool, DevTools club. We got no dev tooling to help our developers. Or our docs are always not current with our versions. They never are up to date. A new method's been added and it's not in the docs for like 2 months. A method's been deprecated and people are still trying to invoke it because the API reference still talks about it. So whether your team was created for one of those reasons, two of those reasons, all of those reasons, or something entirely different, you understand where you come from. Because probably the truth is, since you have joined as a DevRel person in your organization or your team was created, you probably have been doing a lot of things that don't directly relate to the work of DevRel. Because you are those kind of friendly developers that can interact with people. And you have had a lot of doors open that you have walked through. I would say, if you're not doing so already, now is precisely the time to return to the thing that is your highest impact in the organization. And that has to be rooted in your origin story. Okay, now that you understand where you come from because your developer tooling doesn't exist or your doc story is out of date, what do you do with that? Well, you have to start building impact. How do you do that? So it starts with that origin story. So taking that one example, our product is really, really complicated. Okay, what do we build? What kind of initiatives directly answer that question? That we can draw a very clear line from here to whatever's going to be over there. That's what you have to do as a DevRel team. So one great example, of course, is time to hello world. Can you create measurements that show over time the amount of time it takes for a new developer in your ecosystem to commit their first meaningful lines of code in your community? And is that line trending down as your initiatives and activities trend up? That's a great, impactful measurement. What's another one? Time to resolve issues. How long does it take and how complicated is it to answer a question on your discourse forum or in a GitHub issue that's raised or in Discord? How many processes, how many steps does it take for a developer to go from, help me, I don't know what to do, it's broken, to be able to answer and resolve that problem? How much friction do they have to go through? These are two classic examples of direct line from origin story to activity. But how do you measure those things? Sometimes it's obvious. Other times it's not so obvious. I chose those examples precisely because I think they articulate a very clear framework for how one measures these things. And it's coming from the SMART measurement, SMART goal setting, but not all of SMART, just the key ones in my mind, which are specific, achievable, and realistic. I want goals for a DevRel team that are as specific as they possibly can be. I want somebody higher up than me in the org chart to be able to look at that goal and get it on first read, because they typically don't have the time to dive into it and all the nuances. I want that goal to be able to be achieved and be realistic within the time frame that it's allotted for it, because I want our team to have success. And I want our developers to continue to move forward. Because if we build incremental progress, step by step, whether it's you measuring time in quarters or half year or weeks or whatever your sprints are, if you can measure incrementally improving with these specific, achievable, realistic goals that tie right back to your origin story, you're doing something right. But that's only a part of the puzzle. There is a critical piece that needs to also be employed. And I think it's part of an age-old question, a philosophical conundrum that has boggled the minds of philosophers for millennia. If a tree falls in the forest, does anyone know this? You may know this more than BHAGs, right? If a tree falls in the forest and no one's there, doesn't make a sound. Let me offer you the DevRel version. If a DevRel person does work, but no one knows about it, did it matter? Did it even happen? The sad truth of the matter is, if you don't communicate all the time, you can do the best things, the best programs, the most amazing work, but it'll be all for nothing. Because if no one knew about it, it didn't happen. Which means we all collectively need to start flexing that muscle of not bragging, because society's taught us that bragging is bad, but being good communicators of our achievements and accomplishments. We need to shout these things up and across. We did this and we achieved this, and this how many people went to this, and it was great. If you're a manager of a DevRel team, do this for your people a lot. If you are an individual contributor on a DevRel team, do this and teach your manager to do this for you too. If you are communicating all the time and following the metrics and achievable, impactful, all the good things, then you are actually working towards creating a sustainable and viable DevRel organization, which is all great. But what's the Web3 factor? Because everything we said thus far kind of pertains to all dev companies. Dev first, dev second, dev whatever, dev third, dev tangential, dev lovers, all the dev companies. It all applies to them. But the Web3 nuance adds a different dimension to this, which I think is really important. And there's many ways we can tackle this. We're going to tackle it by talking about socks and t-shirts. Anyone ever heard of Hacktoberfest? Anyone participate in Hacktoberfest? Anyone? You got a shirt? You have the shirt still? Sometimes. It depends if it's clean, right? Shirts and socks is how we've classically incentivized people laboring for hours and hours on open source problems and building open source communities. This is the way we've addressed the problem of we want to build a sustainable and dynamic open source community, which is part of creating an authentic developer community. And we do that with shirts and socks. This quote from a maintainer from a couple years ago, I think is so poignant. In the past few years, have maintained a couple relatively popular open source repos in a Web2 context. And I had the great distinction of having to do that during a Hacktoberfest. I very much empathize with this. Hacktoberfest can feel like a distributed denial of service attack on your repositories. Everyone trying to get something in to qualify for a t-shirt. It's overwhelming. Now, lest you say, ha, that's just been a Web 2 problem. That's not our issue. We've got it solved. We know financial incentivizations. We understand self-interest. We build. We help people build. My friends, only 2 words for you that tell us this is also a Web 3 problem. If you have ever been in the context of an emerging layer, emerging project, where airdrop campaigns may be starting to manifest, and you've had to deal with the manifold PRs of adding a comma, or adding an extra, or putting 2 spaces between each sentence, or other, nonsensical pull requests to qualify for those airdrops, it's the exact same problem. So how do we address that? I think we address that in the Web 3 context by looking back on sociological research on why people join communities to begin with. Why do they take part in human communities? Because whether it's a technical community or a non-technical community, it is all the same a human community. And there are basically reasons. There's tons of research on this, why people join these communities. And it boils down to intrinsic and extrinsic reasons. Intrinsic reasons are things like a sense of belonging and fulfillment and purpose. It's getting to say, I'm part of something bigger than me, and I matter. Extrinsic reasons are networking, getting paid, getting rewarded, getting recognized for your accomplishments. And I would say that in the Web 2 model, it has for all too long over-indexed on that belonging and passion, and threw socks at the problem of the extrinsic issue. Literally, threw socks at the problem. While at the same time, we in the Web 3 community often over-index on airdrops and forget that people also want to feel like they matter. They want to feel like their being there makes a difference in that space. A sense of belonging, of passion, and fulfillment. So what is the answer? Well, the answer might be a synthesis in our Web 3 DevRel context of merging the intrinsic and the extrinsic, bringing them both together with bounties, with airdrops, with rewards, with great swag, but at the same time, recognizing that people want to feel like they matter, that their presence there makes a difference. This brings us to our last point, which is remember your BHAG, because that will be the thing that drives you forward in all of this. A BHAG is essentially a big, hairy, audacious goal. It's a way to stimulate progress. It is to be simultaneously long-term thinking, but driven with like a monomaniacal sense of like relentlessness and passion. It is not a vision statement you hang up in a hallway. It is driving you every single day. So a BHAG for a DevRel team might be around creating a community of developer advocates, because you can only hire so many people on your team. But you can build your team exponentially by pointing your North Star towards this big, hairy, audacious goal at all times. So to recap, you start with your origin story, which informs your BHAG, which then builds your OKRs, which leads to initiatives that feed and answer those OKRs, which you measure impactfully, which then feeds back into iterations on your BHAG. That, I think, it's a lot to do. It's easy to say, a lot to do, but that's what sums up a successful playbook for DevRel in a Web 3, or really any, but specifically a Web 3 context. And of course, don't forget to talk about it all of the time. I do want to mention that we have launched a program at Fuel trying to balance between the intrinsic and the extrinsic, offering bounties and rewards, and also building purpose and fulfillment. I think we're doing something unique in this Developer Champions program. And I do have some extrinsic reasons. I have really cool hats. So the first, not socks, not t-shirts, hats, right? That's the difference. First 5 people that complete the small challenge will get a hat if you come and see me after. Just show me you've completed it. And you can watch this. If you don't want to join, you can watch it and get a sense of how we're trying to blend the intrinsic along with the extrinsic. Thank you very much.